All right, well, greetings, everybody. Facebook changed its platform since the last time I did a live stream about a month ago. And so I'm not really sure that this is posting the way that I want or if I'll have a time limit, but that's easy to find out, right? So we'll just keep going until something changes, until something requires a response. So this week, we're skipping over chapter 4. We're going to go back to it afterwards. Right now, we're going to do chapter 5 in the book NonViolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I know this is backwards, but this is what it looks like. If you don't have a copy, I would highly recommend that you get one. So I kind of came right into this live stream. Like, I didn't sit down and read the chapters directly, like in the minutes before I started this. I've obviously read the chapters within the last week to refresh my memory. I have reread this book many, many times. So, but as I was sitting here wondering how that was going to work out, I recognized that the summary for this chapter is very good. So I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll discuss, well, depending on who comments and if I can see those comments, we'll discuss what that's like, what for me, like what the meaning is for me, what the meaning might be for you, and the many perspectives that we can give it. Yes. So the summary, page 60. The third component of nonviolent communication is the acknowledgement of the needs behind our feelings. So I thought chapter 4 is about feelings, and I thought that might be a little bit harder for people to grasp. I thought going to the needs of it might make it a little simpler, and that just could be my perspective. That might be what's easier for me, obviously. But there's bound to be some of you out there who feel that way as well. So, what others say and do may be stimulus for, but never the cause of our feelings. So really let that sink in, because we're really taught in this society to blame people and to be codependent, meaning that what they do affects who we are and how we act. We see that a lot, and it really is a perfect recipe on how to make you unhappy and ill at ease. So you're not going to find a lot of peace in that strategy of letting people define who you are and basing your reality off of their actions. That's reacting, that's not responding. So let's keep reading. When someone communicates negatively, we have 4 options, right? So when we hear something that we perceive as negative, there's 4 strategies that we can be mindful of choosing. And you might want to go through and see which one you gravitate towards the most up till now. Okay? The first is to blame ourselves. The second is to blame the other. The third, and this is the more balanced nonviolent communication way that they want to show you, to sense our feelings and our needs. And when we get really good at that, then we have the objectivity to do number 4, which is to sense the feelings and needs hidden in the other person's negative message. So that's pretty fantastic, and that will bring you a lot of peace, I promise. So continue reading again. Judgments, criticisms, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our own needs and values. So really let that sink in. Judgments, criticism, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our own needs and values that are not being met. Remember we talked about this in chapter 3? Did we talk about this in chapter 3? When a need is being met, you feel good. And when a need is not being met, it doesn't feel good. And that's for you to know. That's not for somebody else to figure out. You are inside your head with all of your history, all of your thoughts, all of your perceptions and meanings and interpretations and experiences. Nobody has access to that but you. So if you really want to be happy, it's an inside job, right? It's communicating. There is interaction with the outside world, but really it has to come from inside you. There has to be a responsibility that is accepted, that you are the creator of your experience and your happiness. Even if you're asking other people to help you create what is in your mind, it's still the vision that's in your mind that you're sharing. So when others hear criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense and counterattack. Now, we all know this is true, right? Let's say it again. When others hear criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense and attack. They rarely say, "Oh, no, I see what you mean. Let me help you support you in that." I know when I hear something that sounds like blame or shame or pain, immediately I'm like, "Oh," right? I'm not waiting to hug that person and invite them into my space, right? I'm like, "Whoa, stay back there. I don't like that. That doesn't feel good," right? So when we can talk to people and share what's going on with us in a way that doesn't involve shame, blame, or pain, then we're creating a space for people to hear us instead of investing their energy in counterattack or defense, right? That's magic right there. The more directly we can connect, hold on, that's why I need this here to help me. There we are. The more directly we can connect our feelings to our needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. In a world where we are often harshly judged for identifying and revealing our needs, right? It's vulnerability to get in touch and to ask for what you really need. And we think that that's being selfish. But let me tell you what I've learned about selfishness. People are going to meet their needs no matter what. It is a human desire. It is a human setting for us to have needs. Needs guide us, they direct us. And I'm not talking about the needs that are like hungers, like insatiable, out of balance hungers. Needs get more and more intense the longer they're not met. Thank you. Those are the words I was looking for. So everything grows in intensity when it's not being met, right? If you're hungry, I guess there at some point you stop being hungry, but that feeling of hunger will intensify, right? So revealing our needs can be very frightening. And this book says, especially for women who are socialized to ignore their own needs while caring for others. So in our society, in our culture, it's held as a gold standard to be a martyr, to deprive yourself so that others can have something. And that's not the way of love. The way of love is filling yourself so that everybody else can be filled as well. It's creating space for love to come through. It's a win-win-win, right? How can you understand what happiness is if you're unhappy at the time that you're trying to share happiness? Does that make any sense? If I'm literally feeling pain and suffering and I'm telling myself that I'm actually sharing something other than pain and suffering, does that make any sense? Let's see. So there's more here, but that it's a different kind of topic. So let's stick with this first topic and then we'll move to the second. Oh, so identifying our needs, we talk about blaming ourselves, blaming other, or identifying our needs or identifying the other person's needs. So what are the needs that people have? Well, there was a page that I showed you last video, and it talked about autonomy and integrity, celebration, interdependence, spiritual communion, physical nurturance, and play. And there's other categories. And there's no hard, fast rule. Like, each one of us is going to have a different value. Excuse me, my nose is itchy. Somebody must be thinking of me. Each one of us are going to have our own value, our own nuance of what we need and why we value that. And give me a minute here. There's a concept forming in my mind that I'd like to share regarding needs. All right, so the needs that I'm talking about are satisfying, fulfilling. They teach us about ourselves. Sometimes they're the path that leads us to the truth of who we are. But it's usually love. Love is usually what we're looking for. We have it in many contexts, and we have sometimes we develop limitations to what that love looks like. So, lust. Lust is a need that has been unmet or has been satisfied in ways that are out of balance. And it needs to keep being fed because it's out of balance and it does not sustain. It doesn't last very long. Just like any addiction, right? You have to get your hit, and then all of a sudden, once the euphoria is over, you're already back to, when can I get that next hit? It's an addiction, basically. The needs I'm talking about are loving needs. And I always recommend to introspectively follow your needs, no matter what they are. So, being honest with yourself, because sometimes we just learn things in a way that's not in alignment with our true nature. But because it's the only thing we know, we don't really have a comparison until we challenge that belief or experience, and the result is something different, right? And then we see that there's a different option to who we are, and we can change how we think of ourselves at that point, right? So let's come back in here to needs about blaming ourselves. This is what I do. I struggle with it. I want to say I struggle with it. It takes mindfulness for me and practice. So our feelings result from how we choose to receive what others say, as well from our particular needs and expectations in that moment. So last video we talked about how vague language and static language takes us out of the moment. And it's not an all or nothing. It's in a right now in the moment, what's happening. I'm being responsive in the moment to what's going on that's dynamic in me and what's ever changing in you. And we learned last week how some of the language that we normally use doesn't take that into account. So being accurate with what's happening in the moment. So we have to know what our needs, expectations, and intentions are, because what we need is always going to direct our behavior. And if you think you can't have what you need, you're going to find ways to get what you need that are covert and manipulative. Period. That's it. Everybody fills their needs one way or the other. It's often people that emulate the behavior that we label as selfish that are not actually meeting their needs, not the true needs. They wouldn't act like that if they were meeting their true needs. They wouldn't be taking from somebody else if they could have permission to fill their own needs. They wouldn't be using guilt or shame to get other people to do what they think that they need, that they can't do for themselves. So there's a stigma around being selfish. But ironically, if you are getting your needs filled, you're not going to act that way. So that's completely counterintuitive, I know. And if you're not getting your needs met, you're more likely to see other people as selfish, especially when they are meeting their needs, right? Because it's something that you secretly are wanting and that you're angry that you can't have, that you keep yourself from having, or you tell yourself that society is telling you can't have it, or you're afraid of what will happen, or maybe you do want to fulfill your needs, but you're afraid of how you'll look to other people. Like, there's all kinds of language going around, right? All kinds of perspectives. So it's time for you to get either okay with the idea that meeting your needs does not make you selfish. It's how you meet your needs that creates that difference. So have a little experiment with me and with yourself about needs this week. Because I'm telling you, I promise you, everybody is meeting their needs either directly or indirectly. And both can hurt. Both can be hurtful. And both can be loving. So that's the difference. Can you do it in a loving way? A loving way is not that people don't get hurt, because people can be hurt at anything. You could say something very nice and well-meaning, and if I want to be hurt, I can see it that way. See what I'm saying? It's really within each person's power how they receive what you're saying, and that's what they're talking about here. Our feelings result from how we choose to receive what the other person is communicating to us. Have you ever had that interaction where no matter what you say, that person is just set in their opinion? Like I had a conversation where somebody was feeling very unloved, and no matter what I said, they were just so sure that they were unloved and they were unlovable, and they were just in that self-destruction mode of ripping themselves apart. It didn't matter what I said or how genuinely I meant it, it just was not getting through. Okay, so people really can take things however they want, no matter how you are trying to say it. So it's important to be able to trust, to check in with yourself and know, like, yeah, this is how I meant it. I feel honest. I feel clear about that. I meant this in a loving way, and they're just not taking that way, and that's okay. That's their choice. And I think that's where they talk about this fourth component of identifying the needs of other people. At that point, you might go into that strategy of saying, well, what could it be that this person is needing? But that's that highly mindful way, right? First, we've got to have that experience and practice with our needs, right? We've got to be able to do that process for ourselves. So, we are led to accept responsibility for what we do to generate our own feelings. Woohoo! That's good. It's about being responsible for me and my happiness, and you and your happiness. So again, this is about being internally focused, not externally focused, because when you have that internal relationship, you can create that external reality of love and kindness and caring, and let people do with it what they will, because that's what they do already. That's what we do already. So, all right, so this is where sorry, a little bit of a rant there. This is where we're going to go back to the first option, right? Blaming ourselves. This is when you take it personal, right? So if you're taking it personal, I know that's weird to think about that. If you're taking something personal, you're blaming yourself in some way. You're saying, when we get offended, we're taking things personally, right? So in a sense, we're blaming ourselves, and then that leads us to what? Point the finger outside and blame in response. So when they were talking about when we hear criticism, that person is putting their energy into defense and counterattack. That's very real. It's very true, right? So we want to take that out of our equation so that people can respond. So when we take it personally, we accept the other person's judgment and blame ourselves. We choose this option at great cost to our self-esteem. So for those of you that have issues with self-worth and low self-esteem, you might be doing this to contribute to your lack of self-worth and self-esteem. And this is probably what you learned when you were growing up. It inclines us towards feelings of guilt, shame, and depression. So wow, that's a lot. So this week, those of you that take it personally, start slowing this process down. Start really paying attention and getting curious about when you're feeling offended, and putting it into the context of, this other person is judging me for this, and am I agreeing with them? Why do I feel the need to say, no, that's not true? If you understand what I'm saying? Really see what part of you isn't quite sure if they're right or not. And get down to it. Get down to that part, that doubt, and really challenge it to say, am I really doing this? And you may not be doing it directly. You may not be doing it in the context that they're talking about, but you may be doing it in a different way. So let me give you an example of that. I was dating this guy, and he was, I just kept feeling like he wasn't being honest about his intentions. I just kept feeling that. And I texted him, and I don't remember what it was that I said, but when it came down to it, the way that I texted him was very roundabout. It wasn't a direct, hey, I don't feel like you're being honest about your intentions. So the irony is, in me sensing that he was doing this, I turned around and did the exact same thing. So as a result of that text, the truth did come out that he was feeling this way, even this one way, even though he was showing me something different. But the reality was, I was doing that same thing, just in a different way. So I don't know if that gave you any clarification. I apologize, but that's what I kind of mean. Like, I was being real with him for where I was, but in the communication of me feeling like, hey, you're not being honest with me, that's where I wasn't very direct. I didn't just say, hey, I don't feel like you're being honest with me. I said something else that was very indirect and literally was similar to what he was doing. So, again, I don't know if that helps with an example of what I'm talking about. So sometimes it's not always a one-for-one behavior. Sometimes what you're taking personal, you're actually doing, but just in a different nuance of it. Don't get stuck up on that. Just know that if you're taking it personally and you tend to take offense, that experimenting with the perception of, all right, this is the other person's judgment, And how am I agreeing with that? Like, what part of me needs to honestly evaluate if I'm doing this or not? Because I tell you right now, when you honestly feel at peace of, no, this isn't me, you won't be offended. You'll be able to start seeing like, oh, that other person is motivated by fear, or it actually has nothing to do with me. That's what you're going to feel like. So if you're taking it personal, there's some part of you that's blaming yourself or doesn't have that certainty of, no, this isn't how I am. So find that certainty. Challenge that belief of uncertainty. Like, challenge that uncertainty and find that resolve. Find the honest part of you that knows. And then you won't have to take it personally. Okay, so the second one was to blame others. I see this a lot right now on Facebook. Woo-wee. So a second option, I'm reading from the book here. A second option is to fault the speaker. For example, in response to, "You're the most self-centered person I ever met," we might protest. "You have no right to say that. I'm always considering your needs. You're the one who is really self-centered." So we're blaming, we're projecting, we're blaming. So here, when we receive messages this way and blame the speaker, we are likely to feel anger. So who doesn't feel anger, right? Who doesn't feel offense and hurt, which means we're internalizing that blaming ourselves. And then who doesn't feel anger in blaming the other person? So again, nonviolent communication is just about taking the blame out of the equation altogether. Just no blame at all. We're going to do accountability. It's a little bit different. So now we're going to segue into the last two, which was sensing our own needs and feelings, and then sensing the other person's needs and feelings. This is what we're going to substitute blame for. This is how we're going to retool our vision to communicate differently. So let's see. So with the same example that I just read about being self-centered, it says, when receiving negative, let's see. So we might reply when we're sensing our own needs, "When I hear you say that I am the most self-centered person you've ever met, I feel hurt because I need some recognition of my efforts to be considerate of your preferences." So can you feel the difference with that? I'm still talking about, I'm always considering your needs. You're the one who's self-centered. It's just that little bit of difference when we own what's happening inside us, when we're vulnerable, when I'm owning what my need is. I need some recognition of my efforts to be considerate of your preferences. It's saying, hey, you know what? I feel like I'm doing these efforts and I really would appreciate if you would be able to recognize that. So, by focusing attention on our own feelings and needs, we become conscious that our current feeling of hurt derives from our need for our efforts to be recognized. So try that and see if it doesn't take the steam out of somebody's sail when they're in the blame game, right? It's like playing tug of war when you just drop the rope and then somebody's just pulling against nothing. So, all right, so we're going to go into number 4. And with the same example. All right, so 4 is to sense other people's feelings and needs, okay? So in that example, we might say, "Are you feeling hurt because you need more consideration for your preferences?" So we're not agreeing that we're selfish. We're not agreeing that we're not being considerate of that person's preferences, or that we never have up to that point. We're just saying, are you feeling hurt because you need more consideration for your preferences? When we accept responsibility for our feelings rather than blame other people by acknowledging our own needs, desires, and expectations, values, or thoughts. And that puts the other person into that internal environment of when I ask, are you feeling hurt because you need more consideration for your preferences? It offers them an option for different context, because now they're thinking, oh, wow, is that person being selfish, or am I actually just needing more consideration for my preferences? And then they go, oh, maybe I do need consideration for my preferences, and I couldn't give myself permission to ask for that. And so I was putting it on that other person, like they failed me, like it was your job to be more considerate and you're not doing it, and so you're selfish. But when I own that, I realize it's nobody's job. That's why kindness is so magical, because it's nobody's job to do anything that you ask them or tell them. We come here with our own free will, and it is a magical, loving thing when people contribute to the well-being of each other. And you know what? You don't take that for granted when you have that understanding, when you see the reality and the truth in that. It doesn't allow you to take a lot of things for granted. So when we accept responsibility for our feelings by acknowledging our own needs, desires, expectations, values, and thoughts, know what feels right for me isn't going to feel right for you. The more we learn about ourselves, the better we can understand what's working, like how the metaphysics of the world work, how emotion and perspective work for other people. The machinery of it anyway, not necessarily the content. So here's some examples. A, you disappointed me by not coming over last evening. All right, so you disappointed me. So in our chapter 1 and 2, we talked about the differences of, here, let me go back. So we talked about when you do this, I feel this. Hold on. Where is that at? When you do this, so observation, I feel this, and then it does or doesn't meet my need, and then a request. So that was the 4 components from chapter 1. So you disappointed me by not coming over last evening. Not an observation. More of blame. Okay, so the nonviolent communication version of that, where you're recognizing your needs, is, I was disappointed when you didn't come over because I wanted to talk over some things that were bothering me. So we're not blaming that other person. We're actually just communicating what's going on with us. And so it wasn't the person that disappointed me. It was the fact that I didn't get to talk about the things I wanted to that was disappointing. You see that? It's a very subtle difference, but man, I'll tell you, a person's reaction, and sometimes people are stuck in their own heads. They might still hear blame if they're really, really caught up in receiving blame, or if they blame other people a lot. Like the blame game is very addictive. It's very addictive to be angry. Those cycles of anger and self-righteousness, they get very addictive. It's a very short-lived powerful feeling, but it's not empowerment, and it always has to be fed. It's very short-lived. So that's how you know that it's not aligned with truth. If you have to keep feeding it, you have to keep getting angry, you have to keep finding ways that people are doing you wrong, or that you need justified, or self-righteousness. If you have to keep doing it, then it's an addiction, right? It's not sustaining. It's not fulfilling. It's not satisfying. There's not that depth to it that is with you even when you're not experiencing it directly, right? That's love, that depth of love. So again, here we're talking about, I was disappointed because I wanted to talk over some things that were bothering me. That's why I got disappointed, because I didn't have the opportunity to do that, to talk, not that I couldn't spend the time with you. Let's see, here's another one. Example number 2, they're canceling the contract really irritated me. So this one's kind of harder for me to see. But let's read the nonviolent communication version to see if we can't make it more clear. When they canceled the contract, I felt really irritated because I was thinking to myself, it was an awfully irresponsible thing to do. Okay, so we're making a judgment call. So, on our end, we might perceive that that's an irresponsible thing to do if somebody cancels a contract, right? But on their end, what if the information for them is changed and the needs that are being met are changed, and canceling the contract is exactly what they need to do? It's possible that both things are true. So when we tell ourselves, when we think, that's an awfully irresponsible thing to do, when really what we're saying is it's really not meeting our needs. Like, we need this contract or this and that, right? We talked about, again, bringing that up. If it doesn't feel good, it's probably not meeting your need. And if it does feel good, it's most likely meeting your need. So if we're labeling something as an irresponsible thing to do, there's probably a need not being met there. And that's the power of needs. When you, really experiment with this for a week. Go through with your needs. Find when you feel good. Find when you don't feel good, and trace it back to a need. What was I needing at that moment? And don't make it about the other person's responsibility. Make it your responsibility to understand. So, like, for example, if I walk in to a room and somebody doesn't say hello and I get really upset, I don't say to myself, well, my need was to be greeted by so-and-so, because I'm just making that their responsibility. Do you see that? But to say, my need was to feel connected when I came into the room, or I was really feeling like I needed to be acknowledged because I don't like feeling invisible. Like, that's getting to know me and what's going on inside me. That's not that person's job to not make me feel invisible. They don't know that I might be feeling invisible. They might have just, had a really horrible night and are half asleep and just didn't think to say hello. There's I don't know what's going on with them, but I do know what's going on with me. So you're going to be a lot more at peace when you start taking responsibility for what's going on inside of you in this way. Okay, so let's see what else we have here in the book. Here we go. This is a good part. It's helpful to recognize a number of common speech patterns that tend to mask accountability for our own feelings. Are you ready? The use of impersonal pronouns such as it and that. It really infuriates me when spelling mistakes appear in our public brochures. That bugs me a lot. So I hope they give us, they give us the nonviolent communication. I was like, I'm going to have to work here. So the nonviolent communication, where we're not masking accountability for our feelings, where we're adding that accountability into our statement, would sound like this. I feel really infuriated when spelling mistakes like that appear in our public brochures because I need and I want our company to project a professional image. So I want you to close your eyes, and I'm going to say this phrase, and I want you to see how it makes you feel. And then I'm going to say the other phrase, and we're going to compare how both feel to each of us. Really infuriates me when spelling mistakes appear in our public brochures. That bugs me a lot. I feel really infuriated when spelling mistakes like that appear in our public brochures because I want our company to project a professional image. Like, I tried to say it like the same energy as the other one, and I just couldn't maintain it. I just couldn't maintain that same energy. It's that much of a difference for me, but I've been aware of nonviolent communication for a while. I don't know what your experience is, but I'd love to hear it. So if you want to type into the comments, that'd be, I'm sure, educational for everybody and collaborative. All right, so here's the second one. The use of the expression I feel an emotion because, followed by a person or personal pronoun other than I. So like a you, a that, or what they. Because we learned in the first chapter an observation or a feeling is, I feel blank because I. There's no other way to say that doesn't involve blame. I feel blank because I. And that doesn't mean you say, I feel disappointed because I need you to do something, right? Because again, we're assigning responsibility to that person. But I was disappointed when you didn't come over because I wanted to talk over some things that were bothering me. Again, I'm taking the responsibility there. So here's the example that they have for that personal pronoun other than I. I feel hurt because you said you don't love me. I feel angry because the supervisor broke her promise. And the nonviolent communication way would be, I feel angry that the supervisor broke her promise because I was counting on getting that long weekend to visit my brother. So that was the need. I wanted to visit my brother, and I won't be able to do that. And I'm angry because I won't be able to visit my brother. So there's some accountability that the supervisor broke her promise, but we're not empowering her. We're not. When we blame other people, we give them our power. We literally are saying, I am powerless to what you just did. So, statements that mention only the actions of others. When you don't call me on my birthday, I feel hurt. Or, mommy is disappointed when you don't finish your food. So the nonviolent communication way is, mommy feels disappointed when you don't finish your food because I want you to grow up strong and healthy. So there it's connecting the disappointment with the need of, I don't think that you'll grow up strong and healthy if you don't finish your food. So that's the belief, right? But in the first one, all we're getting is, I'm disappointed in you when you don't finish your food. And that's a whole different message. Right? You're what is disappointing me in that sentence. Instead of the belief of, I hold a belief that when you finish your food, you'll grow up strong and healthy. That's how I'm relating to it in the second one. So that's a lot of information so far. Let's see. Let me slow it down for me and let you guys soak that in. I'm going to see if we want, there's still so much more for this chapter, so we might just break it up into components. Let me check in and see what feels best in this moment. So before I don't know. As I was saying that, I was reading this sentence and I thought, oh, that's a really good next step. So this week, your homework, even if you don't identify specifically each of these patterns, you can look more into blame. You can look more into needs, right? If it feels good, a need is probably being met. I'd like you to experiment with trying to identify that need, and then if it feels bad, a need is not being met. Now, this is your need, and it needs to be, what's the word? All about you. Again, I'm not including anybody else in the responsibility of this need. And how we're going to do that? It says right here, in each of these instances, we can deepen our awareness of our own responsibility by substituting the phrase, I feel blank because I. So I feel blank because I need. And so your response shouldn't involve the actions of anybody else or list anybody else by name, like specifically. So I'm seeing if there's an example that comes to mind. Well, I mean, the examples that we've already had. So taking responsibility for our feelings by acknowledging the thoughts behind it, the needs behind it. What hope or value has not been fulfilled or has been fulfilled? Let's see, I wish I had a time. There's no time on my phone. I don't know how long it's been. If we express our needs, we have a better chance of getting them met. That's what it says here. And that's really a combination of codependency, like recognizing the difference and not being codependent. So just like I'm doing a review of nonviolent communication, in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to start doing a review of Melanie Beattie's book, Codependent No More. And it talks about being responsible for your needs. And it talks about all the ways that when we assign other people responsibility to meet our needs, how we go about it in manipulative ways, covert ways, hurtful ways, not direct ways, or we overcompensate by being so direct that we're demanding, and that's hurtful too. So look for that. There'll be a review of codependency topics, because these really are hand in hand. In our culture, I think codependency is what created the language that we're using now. And this nonviolent communication really is a more spiritual approach to interconnectedness and approaching each other as whole and complete, and being able to interact in a way that's healthy and loving. If I'm not trying to always get something from you, then I can allow us to share. So here I'm going to read a little bit more before we end. The needs at the root of feelings. If someone says you never understand me, they are really telling us that their need to be understood is not being met. A wife says, you've been working late every night this week. You love your work more than you love me. She is saying that her need for intimacy is not being met. So in nonviolent communication, we might hear, when you work late every night, I feel lonely because my need to connect is not being met. When we express our needs indirectly through the use of evaluations, interpretations, and images, others are likely to hear criticism. When people hear anything that sounds like criticism, again, they are going to invest their energy in self-defense and counterattack. If we want a compassionate response, it is self-defeating to express our needs by interpreting or diagnosing other people's behavior. Instead, the more directly we can connect our feelings to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond to us compassionately, because we're not already putting them on the defense. We're not poking them. Don't poke the bear. Most of us have never been taught to think in terms of our needs. We are accustomed to thinking about what's wrong with other people when our needs aren't being fulfilled. So the next time you think, what is wrong with these people? try to establish what needs of yours are not being met, and not what needs of yours that they aren't meeting. What needs of yours that you just need to be aware of require being met. Again, don't give other people responsibility for meeting your needs. And yes, I understand that there's a bigger context for that, but for now we're learning the smaller context of it. So if you can experiment with me, just bring it into the smaller context. We're going to learn it here before we can learn it out here, okay? And how it relates to everything. But we're starting here. So yes, I'm aware that there's other contexts for that. So figure out what your needs are. And again, don't include anybody else in how to meet your needs or what that means. It's got to be all about you, right? This is an internal process. Let's see here. It's been my experience over and over again, I'm reading from the book, that from the moment people begin talking about what they need, rather than what's wrong with one another, the possibility of finding ways to meet everybody's needs is greatly increased. So, that's what you have to gain by incorporating nonviolent communication and thinking into your day-to-day. That everybody's needs can be met when you're focused on what your needs are. Not the lack. Well, I mean, sometimes it's recognizing that they're not being met, but it's not assigning responsibility to anybody else but you in that process. Now, we can have support from others if we ask them directly and they agree. So yeah. Free will, everybody. Free will. So, I'm going to stop here. And we're going to pick up next week with chapter 5 again. And just to reiterate, when we're done with chapter 5, we're going to circle back to chapter 4, which is about emotions, right? It made more sense to me to deal with the needs first, because the needs really provoke the emotion. So that's how it makes sense to me. So if you have any questions, text me to my page. I'd like to put together a meeting where we can have questions and answers and share experiences and share examples. So I have one person, 2 people that I know would like to do that. And the more interest I get, then I'll start becoming proactive about setting a time and a day for us to have a video conference for that. Until then, I'm just going to review the book chapter by chapter, and the people that are interested can watch that video, replay it at their convenience. And you can send me correspondence or questions or buy your own book or have your own discussions about it. But let's get it out there. Let's get some nonviolent communication out there. So thank you so much for joining. And I hope this was insightful and thought-provoking for you. And it's my intention to help people love each other, and by first loving themselves more and more. And so be blessed, and thank you. Till next time.